Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Hot Mess Life Coach Season 2, Episode 8. I'm your host, Brian Hogan, both a hot mess and a life coach, because yes, that is too allowed. This is the show for people trying to get it together while the world seems to fall apart. And I like to say, while the world seems to fall apart, because we are not actually falling apart. We are going through the birth pangs of a transformation in human consciousness, the likes of which we have never seen. I truly, truly believe that. And I believe things are getting better and better and better in the world, but you wouldn't know that by watching the news media. You would only know that by following the tune inside your heart. Okay, so today I want to talk about the importance of making progress instead of perfection for so many reasons. Because progress is a fantasy. I mean, perfection is a fantasy. That's the first thing. So striving towards perfection is sort of a ridiculous notion because it means you're striving towards something that isn't even real. It's like striving towards becoming a mermaid or becoming a unicorn. You can't do it. It's just, you can't. I mean, maybe on Halloween or in West Hollywood, you can. But otherwise, you really can't. And so you want to strive to make progress, not strive to be perfect. This idea of perfection getting in the way of progress has been around for hundreds of years, and sages and wise men and women from the days of yore have all said similar things. Voltaire, the French writer, said, "The best is the enemy of the good." Confucius, like hundreds of years before that, said, "Better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without." And, you know, we also have Shakespeare. So he says, "Striving to better, oft we mar what's well." And what they're all talking about is this idea that you have the thing that you're working towards. And if you're making progress toward the thing, if you're working hard toward the thing, even if you're working soft, not hard, but you're being consistent, you're making progress, that's better than being stopped and frozen and wishing for a diamond, so better to have forward motion and momentum than to have idealized fantasies and dreams. There's an author named Deep Patel who writes a whole bunch of stuff about this in a Forbes article, which I read recently. And he talks about how effective work is about moving forward toward a desired destination. It's not about making sure that there's no mistakes, that there's no screw-ups. Mistakes will happen. Screw-ups happen. It's momentum that makes all the difference. And ensuring time is not wasted obsessing over the little things that won't end up moving the needle anyway. So I'm not talking about making progress instead of perfection only in the area of productivity. That's just one area, but it's also in the area of like your internal sense of inner peace. Like, or say you want to go on a weight loss journey. I'm currently on a journey of giving up refined sugar, and like all of these things, they don't have to be productivity based in order for them to be progress based. So I'm not talking about workaday rushing productivity culture, although making progress there is also better than striving for perfection there because it takes the pressure off. But looking to make progress instead of perfection is better in every arena, not simply the workaday culture that we've been indoctrinated to believe is somehow so great, because it's actually not great. But making progress is great, even if you're not trying to be productive all the time. So he asks, how do we get more done faster while still remaining effective and responsible? And that's fine. That's a great question. But sometimes the goal isn't even to get more done faster, and that's okay too. But the takeaway is that if we put too much focus and emphasis on the final product, whether that's productivity related or internal journey related, it doesn't really matter. We fall into the trap of idolizing the end result. And you can begin to imagine the perfect end, the perfect goal, the perfect outcome. And maybe that's not what it's supposed to be. And it's probably not what's going to happen either. But what will happen is you'll make progress. Like, if you've ever tried to learn a musical instrument, then you know well that the first time you do, you play it, you suck at it. You know, that's just how it is. And the second time you play it, you suck at it, but a little less maybe. And then the third time you play it, because you're tired and frustrated, maybe you suck at it the most. And then the fourth time you play it, like, oh, I remember how these notes string together. My fingers are doing a little bit of the thinking, and boom, you're off to the races, and muscle memory is kicking in, and you're starting to get it, and you're starting to learn. So there's a learning process that happens in all humans. It's hardwired into our brain. This is how we learn, through consistent action repeated over time. Taking that consistent action repeatedly over time while focusing on the next moment takes all the pressure off. If we're taking that repeated action over time to learn something and we're focused on the end result, like I want to play the perfect recital at Radio City Music Hall, then that's going to put all the pressure on, and it might stop us ultimately somewhere down the road when there's a setback from continuing, because we'll give up because the pressure is too much and it's not what we signed up for, and we were just trying to have fun in the beginning. So if you can dethrone perfection and re-enshrine progress, what you'll do is you'll keep the pressure off and you'll keep the idea of having fun on, which both are better, right? Having less pressure and more fun, that's better. That's also better in every area, whether you're trying to be productive, whether you're trying to go on an inner healing journey, whether you're trying to learn a musical instrument, whether you're trying to learn to lift weights, or whether in my case, you're trying to give up sugar. It's just better if it's a little more fun and a little less pressury. So here's what you want to do. You want to place more focus on your day-to-day habits and processes that allow your work to unfold. So if you have good habits in place, then the end result is going to be what you need it to be. And you need to trust that. Forget about the perfection thing. But you also want to allow yourself plenty of room to adjust and to learn and to tweak and to make changes. Like, it's okay if you start out with a New Year's resolution that's one way, and then partway through, say mid-February, you're like, okay, that was too hard. So instead of throwing out the whole baby with all the dirty bathwater, you want to keep the baby and say, okay, I'm just going to adjust how I do this. So instead of saying I'm never going to eat cheese again, you might say, okay, I'm going to go to having cheese twice a week, because that means I can go way longer into the future without having cheese daily again, if you were like a cheeseaholic or something. So it's like you make a tweak and you say, okay, I'm going to try, instead of being so restrictive, to be a little less restrictive and to allow myself room to adjust, room to grow. So that's not perfect, but it's progress. Nothing is more encouraging than making progress. Nothing is more discouraging than failing at trying to be perfect. And so we can just drop the whole idea of perfect for what it's worth, a pile of garbage anyway. The truth is, tomorrow's idea will always be better. Every day you're going to improve, and you're going to see ways to change and what you can change and what you can adjust. So it's not about waiting to get the perfect result or waiting to get it right before you implement it. It's about sharing it and releasing it while it's in its infancy stage. There's a phrase that I've heard in some sort of leadership circles, which is like, done is better than perfect. So if you're working on something, say you're trying to release a coaching program, or you're trying to, develop a lesson plan for your classroom, it doesn't even matter what it is, or a workout plan for yourself, like, done is better than perfect. So you might think, I need to do more research. I need to develop the perfect workout plan before I start. But it's not true. Just make a workout plan, a crappy workout plan, even a totally awful workout plan, and go to the gym and take it easy. Don't injure yourself, and start implementing the workout plan. As you go through the workout plan, it's going to return energy to you. It's going to return personal power to you, because you're going to, I'm doing what I say I do. Your identity begins to catch up with your reality, and you need the two things to match in order to keep making forward progress. When we try to take giant swings at something before we're ready for it, we can sometimes succeed at the giant swing, but then we're out there on this limb and we're like, oh, this isn't really who I am. And so we will oftentimes revert back to where we started before the big swing, or maybe just a little bit in front of that. That's because our identity, how we see ourselves, how we think of ourselves, hasn't caught up to the reality of the big swing we took, even if we were successful at taking the big swing. So you want to build your identity up at the same rate at which you change your reality up, so that the two things stay matched, they stay caught up. It doesn't mean that you're stuck in the reality you have. It means that you just keep making 1 degree turn after 1 degree turn after 1 degree turn until you've implemented large changes in small increments over time. So you can just reset your expectations, like building something great, whether it's habits or courses or workout plans or anything else, or dietary changes. It's about committing to it, refining the idea, and then continuing to try things, to make it an experiment, to allow it to be fun, to throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks like spaghetti. So if you wait until you think you're ready to execute the idea perfectly, you're actually shortchanging the learning process, because it's in execution that you learn and that you can refine and that you can do better the next time. So you want to keep executing, even if you know the plan is crappy. Just start out with the crappy plan. When I started working out again back like sometime mid last year, like every workout I did made me so sore, and I pulled muscles here and there. And like, it wasn't the best workout plan, but it motivated me to keep going forward. And then I would do Google searches and try to add things to my plan. And I curated my social media, so I was following other people that wanted to have similar workout plans, and I was learning as I went. But if I was just trying to pile on all the learning and front load all the learning and never doing any of the action taking, I would have become overwhelmed. So you want to find a way to balance the part of your nature that wants to do the research, that wants to do the fact finding, with the mechanism in your body that learns, which is the physical taking action mechanism. Like, we don't learn only by theorizing, we learn through experience. So like, here's just a philosophical example. You can learn about the idea that a stove is hot from a book, but you don't really know what that means until you touch a hot stove, and then you're like, ow, hot, and you will never do it again because you've learned through experience. So you don't always have to learn through the experience of like injuring yourself and ending up in the burn unit. I'm not saying that. Learning can be pleasant. Like, you can learn to play the piano pleasantly by not striving for perfection, taking the pressure off, and slowly and in a fun way messing around on the piano. But you're going to mess up a lot, and that's okay. That's like what I mean by touching the stove. You messed up and you got burned. So you can mess up at anything, but you don't have to pull a muscle and you don't have to get burned. But you just have to experience the process of messing up, the process of making mistakes, the process of failing. Because why did failing become such a dirty word in our culture? Failing is literally the precursor to any kind of forward motion. Like, I like to say feedback, not failure, because anytime you do something and what you think of as a failure is really just an opportunity to get feedback from the world around you, from the people around you, from your own experience, to say, okay, this has got to be tweaked so I can make progress. Not so I can become perfect, screw all that, but so I can make progress. So there's some research out there about change, how to make change, and it actually is very much rooted in the idea of dispensing with the idea of perfection and making consistent small progress instead. So perfection is frustrating because it's not attainable. Progress, on the other hand, is hopeful because progress is always there for you. As long as you're making adjustments and improvements, you can always be making progress. Every day you can make progress no matter what it is you're up to. Small changes now lead to big changes later. In the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, he gives this metaphor of being on an airplane, and like the pilot, you set a course for somewhere, like say they set a course for Japan or something, and then they just change the tail fin rudder thing. I have the terminology wrong. Whatever. I'm not a pilot. You change the tail fin thing 1 degree, and then because you're going such a long distance, so you're going in this direction, and then you just change the thing 1 degree. But because you're going so long in such a long distance, that 1 degree change over time brings you to an entirely different destination. And so but making a 1 degree change early on in your habits, in your routine, can lead you from ending up in Japan all the way to Australia. That's like the analogy he gives in the book. So big changes happen over time when we make consistent small changes in the now, consistent little changes in the now moment. So like I said a minute ago, you make 1 degree turn by 1 degree turn, and you can improve your entire life. The stages of change model is two researchers, like I put Pasoka, I can't say that name, sorry, and Di Clemente created this model back in the 1970s, and it has 3 elements about it. Readiness to change, which is like, do you have the resources and the knowledge to make lasting change successfully? Barriers to change, is there anything preventing you from making the change? And likelihood of relapse, like what might trigger a return to the former behavior. One of the things that will trigger a return to the former behavior is trying to skip way ahead by making giant swings that you're not ready for, and then your identity doesn't match your reality and you revert back. The beauty of this model and why I like it so much, the stages of change model, is that it has relapse inherently embedded in it as part of the cycle. Like, it's not like you don't avoid relapse. You just go through relapse and you learn from your relapse and you move on again. And so it's like the same, what I was just talking about. Failure is part of the process. Failure is just feedback. Relapse is just relearning. It's the same thing. So in this model, change occurs gradually, and relapses are an inevitable part of the process. People are often unwilling or resistant to change during the early stages, but they eventually develop a proactive and committed approach to changing their behavior. This model demonstrates that change is rarely easy, but it often requires gradual progression or small steps toward a goal. And if you make the small steps and you take the need for perfection away, even though it's not easy, it becomes exponentially and infinitely easier. In the coaching program, the Martha Beck Wayfinder coaching model that I'm trained in, we call these turtle steps. And Martha likes to describe it that the way that you know that when you're taking action, you're figuring out what's your next turtle step to take. And the way that you know that you've landed on a turtle step is that when you think about taking it, the reaction you have in your body is like, oh, that is so ridiculously easy. Of course, I'm going to take that step. Once you've landed on a step that feels so small and minuscule and maybe even irrelevant that it's like so ridiculously easy that of course you could take it, that's your next turtle step. Then you just take it. And then from that new place, you think, what's the next turtle step? Sometimes a turtle step could be as simple as like, I'm going to open Google Chrome today. Tomorrow, I'm going to type something in the search engine. The next day, I'm going to read the headlines of 3 articles. The next day, I'm going to read the first paragraph of 1 article. That's fine. Whatever. Just you're making progress. Every day you're making progress. It doesn't matter how small it is. We say turtle steps are like a baby step divided by 1,000 because this is the way change is guaranteed to happen. You can make big changes and sweeping changes, but they don't often last and they're very hard and they're often scary. But if you make small incremental changes, you are sure to be on the road to making lasting changes because you're moving forward towards progress and you're forgetting about perfection. So in the stages of change, the 5 stages, there are 6 stages actually. The first one is pre-contemplation. This is like you're in denial. You don't even realize you have a problem. It's called pre-contemplation because during this stage, people are not considering a change. It's before they're even contemplating it. People in this stage often don't think they have a problem, but maybe others around them do. Like, if you're an alcoholic or something, or in some cases, people in this stage don't understand that their behavior is damaging, whether it's to themselves or to others. Like I had a sugar addiction. And so for a long time, I was in the pre-contemplation stage because I was like, it's a victimless crime. It's not hurting anybody, but it was hurting me. It was harming me to be a sugar addict. And so that was me being unaware of the harm that my behavior was causing because it wasn't harming anybody else, but it was harming me. So pre-contemplation. In this stage, you can feel really resigned to your current behavior. Maybe you feel like you don't have control over your behavior. If you're in this stage, you can begin by asking yourself some questions. Have you ever tried to change this behavior in the past? How do you recognize that you have a problem? And what would happen for you? What would have to happen in order for you to consider your behavior a problem? So just contemplating on those questions can help move you from the pre-contemplation stage into stage 2, which is the contemplation stage. Characteristics of this stage are being ambivalent, having conflicted emotions. You have things that you do in this stage as you'll weigh the pros and cons of behavior change. You'll confirm whether you're ready or able to change, and you start to identify the barriers to change, the 3 elements of change we talked about before. So people become more aware in this stage, and the costs of making change stand out more. This creates conflict, it creates ambivalence, it creates uncertainty, and this stage can last for months or even years. Or it can go quicker. Like the more self-awareness you bring to it, the more deliberate you are about trying to move through the stages of change, the quicker you can move through them. But it's not about speed, it's about progress. It's about small steps forward every day. It's about being consistent. So once you're in this stage, you can ask yourself some questions like, why do I want to make this change? Is there anything preventing me from making this change? And what are some of the things that could help me make this change? Stage 3, where you'll end up after that contemplation, is preparation. In this stage, it's a lot of what we've been describing. People experiment with making small changes. They do research. They collect information about what it might mean to make the change. People write down goals. They prepare a plan of action. They make a list of motivating statements. They make a list of core values and reasons why they want to make the change. There's a couple steps in this stage that you can make to improve your chances of making change successfully. You can gather as much information about your behavior as possible. Write down your goals and be really deliberate about them, making sure they align with your core values and that you have deep personal reasons for why you want to change, why you want to make this change. And you can obviously, reach out to resources like support groups, podcasts, counselors, friends who can offer advice and encouragement. Like, change is much easier when done in community. So if it's something where you feel shame about it, then you could find a private setting, like a 12-step group or a counselor. But if it's something that doesn't have shame and you're just trying to, and nothing needs to have shame, I don't mean it like that, but if that's how you feel, but if you don't feel that, then just share it with some people you love so that you can be supported as you make changes. Step 4 is the action stage. And in the action stage, you start making direct action towards your goal, and you can reward your successes and you seek out social support. So this is one of the things you do when you move from preparation into action. You really do need to seek out those social supports. During this 4th stage, people start to move forward towards attaining their goals, and the resolutions will fail inevitably because we're trying things. We're trying to make those big swings sometimes and we revert backwards. We make a big swing, we revert backwards. But we learn something new every time we do this. So people make a New Year's resolution to lose weight. They immediately start a new exercise regimen. They embark on a healthier diet. They cut out all their snacks. These definitive steps are vital to your success, but these efforts are often abandoned in a matter of weeks because the previous steps have been overlooked. So if you move through pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and then move into action, you're way more likely to succeed than just jumping ahead into action, which is what we often do when we make a New Year's resolution. So if you're currently taking action towards your goal, it's important to congratulate and reward yourself for any positive steps you take. Reinforcement like this and support from others and support from yourself are extremely important in helping you maintain positive steps towards change. So, I'm on a journey of giving up sugar. And every time I have a successful week with no sugar, I reward myself by watching something fun and useless on Netflix. If I don't follow through on the reward, then I'm basically lying to my body and I'm lying to myself. So whatever reward you set up for whatever change you want to make, you have to follow through on the rewards. Just make sure that you follow through on the rewards. And if you don't make it all the way that week, that's okay. That's okay too. You know what I mean? Failure is just feedback. Failure is not a dirty word. So once you're in the action stage and you start to really make commitment to it and your habits start to change, you'll move into the maintenance stage. This can take a while as well. It can take a fair amount of time. But some characteristics of the maintenance stage are maintaining the new behavior and avoiding temptation. And this is where we often develop coping strategies for temptation. And again, here, it's really important to remember to reward yourself. So this stage is like where the old habits have been fully replaced by the new habits. Fully is like maybe a large word, but like pretty significantly replaced, let's say. And if you do falter, don't be hard on yourself or give up. Instead, remind yourself that this is a minor setback and you've come really far. You're in stage 5. You're maintaining a new lifestyle and you just need time for your identity as this new person. I was a sugar addict. So now that I'm right now, I'm 9 weeks into no sugar, basically no refined sugar, and I'm 9 weeks into that. But sometimes I still think of myself as a sugar addict. So my identity hasn't caught up to my reality. The reality is I haven't had sugar in 9 weeks. So when I have a setback, I'm trying to think of, so I didn't have a setback with sugar exactly, but I had a Coke Zero the other day, which is no sugar, but it's chemicals and all this other crap. And I'm trying to also be off processed food as much as I can. So in a way, that was a bit of a setback. And what I need to remind myself of is that my identity as a person who eats junk food hasn't caught up to my reality as a healthy person who doesn't eat junk food. So the new identity where I can identify as, hey, I'm a healthy person that doesn't eat junk food. It's on its way to me to match my current reality. But so you don't want to be hard on yourself or give up when you have a minor setback, because the minor setback is just evidence of the old identity that is no longer you, or it's the identity that maybe is partly you, but not fully you anymore, and it is falling away. So let minor setbacks happen. This is the beauty of this stage of change model. Stage 6 in this model is called the relapse stage. And this is why I love this model so much, because it just embraces relapse. You're going to mess up. It's okay. We're on a journey of making progress, not a journey of becoming perfect, because a journey of becoming perfect is like a journey of becoming a unicorn. It's a fantasy, and you can't do that unless it's Halloween. So characteristics of the relapse stage are disappointment, frustration, feelings of failure, all this yucky stuff. You have triggers. You start to identify what your triggers are. You start to learn, like, okay, whenever I go that route home, I pass that bar, so I don't want to go that route home anymore. Or whenever I go down that aisle in the grocery store, I end up with Oreos in my cart, so I'm just going to skip that aisle if I can. You figure out what your triggers are, and you start to learn to avoid the triggers and recognize the barriers to your success. Again, this all goes much more smoothly when you have supports. So like one of the ways I enlisted support was I just told my family early in January, I was like, don't offer me sugar anymore. Like, I don't want it. Just don't ask me if I want to take a bite of this, if I want to take a bite of that. Sometimes they've messed up on that because they're human too. And it's really not their job to fully change their behavior for me, but because they love me, they try. And so there's a lot less temptation being pushed in my face now as I try to be on this sugar-free journey, because my family is supporting me in my endeavor. Even though they still eat sugar, they're supporting me in my endeavor. They try not to eat it in front of me. They don't ask me if I want a bite, that kind of thing. They just know not to offer anymore. So that's becoming a habit for them, which is in turn supporting me. So enlist your community for support any way that you can. So just as a quick example before we end, I had to do a character analysis paper for my clinical mental health counseling program. It was 14 pages and it had 30 sections, and it was awful and boring. And oh my God, I don't even know if I learned anything from it. Like, I didn't like that assignment at all, to be fully transparent. So if anyone from the program is watching, sorry, but that assignment was not useful to me, but I had to do it. And the way that I did it was in very small increments. So I wrote, and I usually like to sit down on one day and just like knock all my stuff out. But this assignment was too much for me. It was too boring for me. Like, I couldn't even stomach the idea of sitting down and writing the whole thing in one fell swoop. It was that, I felt dreadful about it. So I wrote 1 page a day over 14 days. And for 2 weeks, I just made slow, tiny progress. So there was like 28 to 30 sections. So I did 2 little sections a day. And I was just like, I'm going to knock out a section. I would like knock out one section, and then I would leave for hours and go do something else. And then I would knock out the other section later in the day. So I was even making turtle steps out of the 1 page. And then by the end of one day, I had 1 page done and 2 sections done. 2 weeks later, right before it was due, I had the whole 14-page hoopla done, and I turned it in, and it's fine, and I got a good grade, even though I hated every second of it. But I did it in small turtle step way, and the small turtle step way made it go from this arduous, daunting task that I never wanted to do, like climbing a mountain, to this little tiny thing that I could tackle a little bit day by day and avoid a lot of the suffering and just get it done. So that's just one example of a way you can implement turtle steps into your process of trying to make progress instead of perfection. The other way is to adopt and exercise that stages of change model, which starts with contemplation. After you realize that you have a thing you want to change, which is what happens at the end of pre-contemplation, you start contemplating, and you can contemplate for as long as you need to. Think about the ramifications of making the plan. I knew I wanted to give up sugar around Thanksgiving. I didn't give up sugar until January 1st. I was contemplating how that was going to look and what that was going to be like for 6 weeks. And in transparency, in the week before, in the week leading up to it, I had made the firm decision, okay, this will be my New Year's resolution. And so that week, I like literally shame ate whole trays of cinnamon rolls all by myself in my room a couple nights in a row. I would like bake an entire Pillsbury Doughboy like thing of cinnamon rolls, bring it downstairs and eat it, and hope nobody noticed or asked me questions about it. And for the first 3 weeks of being off sugar, I had dreams about the cinnamon rolls. Cinnamon rolls aren't even my favorite thing. Like, I could care less about cinnamon rolls, but like I couldn't get them out of my head because I was going through like the physical withdrawal symptoms from all the sugar I had in my diet prior to that. But so I'm not saying in your contemplation stage you need to shame eat cinnamon rolls, but you can if that's going to help you. And from January 1st until now, I've been pretty much sugar free. but I was in the contemplation stage for a long time. And in that last week, I started doing preparation, like which part of my preparation was maybe a little backwards, or I was loading up on a bunch of sugar, but I was doing other stuff too, like researching dietary changes I could make and recipes that would make me full and all that stuff. And then in January, I moved into the action stage and I started taking action. And that's where I am now. I'm in the action, maintenance, and relapse stage. Hoping there aren't too many relapses, but I know it's part of the process and it's okay because I'm not trying to be perfect at this. I'm trying to have a new identity as a person who doesn't eat refined sugar as much as humanly possible. And so I'm content making progress as my reality, as my identity catches up to my new reality. So that's what I have for you. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. I love having you here. And if you're watching this from the future or listening to it on the podcast, I love you all too. If you know of anyone who might benefit from what you heard here today, please share this video, tag them, like it, post it, tweet it, TikTok it, whatever it is you do out there in social media land. And if you want to learn more about me and what I do, then you can visit my website at www.thebrianhogan.com down below for more information or to apply for coaching. In the meantime, I will see you all next week for episode 9 on Thursday, March 2nd at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, be hot, be messy, and be blessed. Much love. Thank you.